Hello everybody. In this video we're going to take a look at Character Creator 3 and how we can create our own unique characters. So I've got Character Creator open right now, and this is the character that we're looking at right now is the character that typically comes up when you first open up the program. And while we could certainly use this character here as a starting point to build our own characters, I would like to point out that by going to the Content tab, you can bring in other characters as well as your starting point. For instance, here under the projects, we've got some projects that have already been created, which we can use as a starting point for our characters. We can also go to the base tab here, and we can find some other characters that we can also use as a starting point. For instance, I'll try this one named Caleb. Double click on it and it'll swap out our current character with this Caleb character. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And here we have the Caleb character. It looks a little strange because actually it applied the very same outfit that the previous character had on. But that brings up a good point anyway, because we can change the clothing on these characters simply by going to the cloth tab here. And if we wish, we can choose an entirely different outfit. We've got different shirts, pants, and so on to select from. I'll go ahead and give this character a pair of boxers, go to the scene, and maybe we'll get rid of the bra. So now we have another character that we can use as our starting point. I do recommend looking at what is available here in the base category here, taking a look at the various different characters and different options in here. One thing I would comment on, however, is that there are some different versions here. We've got the CC1 and the CC3 version of these character models, and there are some differences with them, with the CC3 plus characters being, I believe, a little bit more advanced. So that's just something I would be aware of. You'll notice that there's also some other categories here like hair, so we can give our character a hairstyle if we wish by just dragging and dropping the hair onto the character. And we have some additional settings here that you can also take a look at, such as various teeth and eyes. Eyelashes as well, actually. In fact, I should point out, when we are in this base tab here, you can either navigate its contents by clicking on these individual selections here, or you can also cycle through some of these different settings using these icons up here. So for instance, if we want to go right to the eyes, we can click on that, or the eyelashes, the hair, and so on. I do recommend playing around with these and trying and dragging and dropping them onto your characters to see what kind of effects you can get with that. Okay. So we've taken a look at some of these base properties of our character, but I'd just like to point out that there are some other tabs here as well. For instance, we've got skin, makeup, cloth, which we did take a brief look at earlier when we changed the clothes on the character, accessories, poses and stage elements. And you can check out what's in each of those categories simply by clicking on them and adding the element to your character that you want, such as these glasses here. And when we want to start to adjust our character, what we can do, I'm going to zoom out, take a look at this character here wearing these glasses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this tab here in our modify. We're going to go to this third tab here, which is the morphs. And this is where we can really start to customize our character. This is where we can really make our character have a unique personality, nice, interesting face, or change the character's body, and so on. So these are using techniques called morphs or morph targets, also known as blend shapes in some other packages. And just to quickly point this out, I'll just pick, let's say, the arm, for instance. You'll notice that we have a bunch of different properties here for the arm, everything from arm length to forearm length, forearm scale, elbow scale, and so on. Lots of different properties. Or we can go to the hand, and there's different properties for the hand, for the jaw, the mouth, whatever part of the body you want to work on. Let's take a look at the arm, and I will increase the arm length simply by taking this slider and dragging it to the right, or if I want to make them shorter, dragging it to the left. You'll notice that these values have a maximum and minimum value here. So for instance, if I make it short, like here the value is -40. What if I want to make it even shorter? Well, I can. I simply need to type a value in here. Let's say like, let me put a -100. I just put 100 in there, -100. And you can see that now the character has some ridiculously short arms. So you're not confined to these values for these morph targets or blend shapes. You're not confined to those. You can go beyond the limits that they have established here if that's what you need to do. Now, when you first start working on your own characters, I think that oftentimes it's a good idea to start with something a little more neutral than some of these base meshes that we've just taken a look at. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So what I'm going to do is come over here to modify, and I'm going to say load neutral base, and we'll go ahead and select the CC3 plus so that we get the more robust versions of these characters, the more up-to-date versions. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. We are going to discard what we have in here now, so would I like to save? No. And I'm going to replace all, so I'll say OK. And this will replace this character with a more neutral base that might be a really good starting point for us when developing our own characters. So now that we have this more kind of neutral base, we can go in lots of different directions with it. Again, coming over here to the Modify panel, we'll first take a look at some very big changes that we can make to this neutral mesh here. I'm going to go to Body here, and what I want to point out is that we have a lot of different presets here already that we can choose from. And currently these are all set to 0 because we've got this more kind of neutral mesh right now. Now, by taking these sliders, we can adjust. You can see that this adjusts the character, made it into this neutral, well, what they call neutral female. or we can scrub that back and bring it back to its more neutral state. Here's a couple other variations. Come down here for some of these male bases. Notice it's not actually changing the face right now. We can change the face elsewhere in here. The other thing I should note is that you can combine these. So for instance, we could take 100%, or let's say 50% of this Caleb body here. I'm going to go ahead and just type the value in to get it exact, 50%. And we could make it 50% Kevin as well. So you can mix and match these blend shapes here very easily. Or if we were to go 100 and 100, it might end up looking a little bit strange because we're bringing it to 100% of the Caleb morph as well as 100% of the Kevin morph, in which case it starts to look a little bit unrealistic. I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to its more kind of neutral state here. So really the way that I would typically recommend using these morph targets here, these initial ones, is to get very quickly to a point where then you can maybe start doing more of the fine-tune adjustments to your character. So to that end, I'm going to go ahead and just crank this up using the what they call the CC3 plus neutral male. I think that'll be a really good starting point for exploring further the different settings here. And I'm going to go ahead and come all the way down here to head, and we'll look at some of the very well, the big changes that we can make rather than getting focused on the details right now. Some of the big changes we can make by using some of these head blend shapes as well, or morph targets as well. In fact, I'm going to go ahead, well, you can see that we can explore these. Again, you can mix and match them according to your needs. I'm going to go ahead and just go with this CC3 plus neutral male, whatever that means, and I think that will be a good starting point for this. Okay, so we'll start taking a look at some more of the sliders that we can work with to adjust our character. Here is our character right now. I'm going to go ahead and go to the clothing tab, and we'll just throw some boxers on this character here. How about something, oh, we'll throw these on him. There we go. And now we'll start making some more adjustments to our character. So we've looked at these big changes that we can make to our character. These changes that are just kind of overall changes that affect either the whole body or the whole head. And we found that here for body and here for head. Now, if I come over here to body, and what we can do, I'm going to click on this full body here, and we'll expand that as well. Notice that we have these same options here. We've got our character options here, and then we also have some general options. It's really good to select some of these individually here to be able to narrow down what you're trying to change with your character. So here's some more kind of big overall changes that we can make to our character. You can see that we've got this body thin, and that's a quick and easy way to make the character's body thinner. Or body fat, B, and you can put it anywhere in between. Body muscular, body builder. And here's a very important one, character scale. So if we drag this to the right, the character will become bigger or smaller. What's interesting is that it's actually keeping the same proportions of the character, but this is a really convenient way to make your character either bigger or smaller depending on your needs. For when you bring this character into a project, let's say an iclone, and you want it to be larger relative to the props in your scene or relative to the other characters in the scene, for example. So these can be very, very useful for making those quick changes, once again, to the overall body shape of your character. One other thing, remember, as we looked at with some of the other sliders a little bit earlier, that you can go beyond the limits that they have established here with these targets. So currently I have it set to 100 on this body muscular. Now I'm going to put it on a really ridiculous number just so you see what happens. I'll put it on 500 and you'll see that it just continues pushing the target in that direction to a point where it's not really all that usable. So I wouldn't recommend using ridiculous numbers like that, but there are times when you can certainly go at least a little bit above what they've established as your max here. I'm going to bring that back down. So let's start taking a look at getting a little bit more into some of the specifics, instead of looking at the overall big changes that we can make to our character, let's start focusing on the individual parts of our character. And here we're already in shoulder. And what you'll notice is that just with shoulder, we've got 6 different sliders that we can adjust. We can adjust the shoulder scale, shoulder width, the top to height here, another top to height property here, the deltoid, so we probably have to come around here to see what's going on with that, but this deltoid, subtle, but you can see how we can adjust these values to fine-tune our character. I'm going to go ahead and give our character a bigger shoulder width, and we'll go ahead and go with that. One other thing, though, I should point out to you is that while we can use these sliders here in the modify window here, if you select you have to have your selection tool selected, not your move tool or your rotate or scale tool, but your select tool. If you have your select tool selected, then when you put your mouse over a different part of the body, I'll just work on the shoulder again, and I use my left mouse button, you'll see I can adjust that value directly on the character. Notice that as I do that, it's actually changing the value on the slider itself right here. Let's take a look at that. So you can see it's changing that value. So if you prefer something that feels a little bit more direct, a little bit more like you're right on the character there, then you can work that way. So we've taken a look at the shoulder, but you'll notice that there's a lot of different categories just under body that we could be looking at as well. For instance, we've got the arm. Here are all the different sliders for just the arm. Everything from wrist scale to forearm scale and so on. Arm length, we can change all of that. We can make the arms longer, we can make them shorter. Again, remember that you can go to values beyond what they've established as the let's say, preferred range. We've got some general categories for arm. We've got armpit, upper arm properties, forearm properties. We've got the hand. We've got some further categories under the hand here that we can adjust. The chest, the back, the waist, and so on. So I'm not going to actually go through these because what I really recommend doing is first just exploring with them. Go through and experiment with them and you know, and just see what they do. Let's go ahead and work our way down now to the head, which works very, very similarly to the body. So with the head, we can take a look at all the head properties by selecting the head here. And then, you can see that there's a lot of different sliders here, very, very many of them to play around with. But these are the same exact sliders. If you were to just select full head, then that just narrows down the selection to just full head or skull or forehead and so on. But here under the head category, this is a place where you can really start to fine tune your character and give your character a lot of personality. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these properties now. So I'm going to go ahead and go to skull. You'll see that we can change the skull height. The skull width. These properties, such as the skull back scale, properties that will change the overall shape of the head here. And remember, just like with the body, we can come over here with our select tool and we can do it directly on the character as well. Select tool activated, and you can see that that value is adjusting in the modify panel as I work directly on the mesh here. Forehead, we can move on to forehead. You'll notice that there's some properties here that we can adjust. The brow. Changing the angle of the brow, for instance, or the brow depth. Zoom in a little more so you can see that a little better. Various sliders for the eye, the ears, the cheek, and so on. Again, I'm not going to get into the details with these because really what I encourage you to do is to just explore them and just play with them and try them out and see what they do. One thing I think I will do as I work on this character here is the neck. Right now, based on the character's chest width here, and the neck just feels a little bit weak to me. So I'm going to go ahead and go to neck, and we'll just adjust that neck scale a little and give this character a more appropriate neck that fits with the body type, let's say. So I'm going to go ahead and just spend a little bit of time playing with this character, working with it, and I'll see you again in just a moment. So I worked on that character that we were looking at earlier a little more. I decided I wanted to make something a little more like maybe a dwarf-like character from something like Lord of the Rings or some sort of fantasy world. Let's take a look at a couple more things that we can do with this character besides just working with these morphs here, with these morph targets. And to demonstrate this, I think what I'll do is go to the skin here. And you'll notice that there's actually a couple things that we can do with this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add some body hair to the character. So I'm going to go ahead and add the full body. We'll go ahead and drag that onto the character. So just added that onto the character. It took a little while. It looks like he lost his boxers in the process. So we'll go ahead and fix that in a moment. But let's go ahead and add a little more. Remember that we can add hair to him. Come over here and add a hairstyle to the character by dragging and dropping it. So we've got the hair on the character. You'll notice, however, there are some clipping issues. We'll take a look at how to resolve that in a later video. Because actually I wanted to show you another thing that we can do with the hair. As you can see right now with just our defaults, we have really kind of a limited selection of hair to work with. Let's just go over to the scenes. We'll get rid of the hair by deleting it. Go back to our content, back to skin, and let's give our character a beard, and we'll also, instead of giving hair, apply one of these scalp presets to the character. I'm going to go ahead and put the scalp preset on there first, just drag it onto my character. Here we get this pop-up asking if we want to replace or add. Because I don't want to lose some of the other work I did on the body, I'm going to say add. And now our character has a close-shaven head here. Looks a little clean shaven though for a dwarf, and while we don't really have any good options with the defaults here for adding a beard for the character, rather a heavy beard, we can add some of this stubble here. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the character as well by dragging and dropping it. Once again, I'm going to click on add. And there we go. Here's our character. Now, maybe to finish this off, we'll go ahead and put some clothes on the character. So I'm going to go to my clothes tab. We'll give our character a shirt. And we'll give the character a pair of pants. It actually looks like the character got his shorts back, and I think that's because we're actually not working in the skin tab here with the editor activated. You can see that if I activate the editor, then the clothes will come back off. And if I deactivate it, then the clothes come back on. So we'll go ahead and give our character some pants. Jeans or khakis? That's the question. Let's give him some biker jeans. And there he is. So I was actually hoping I wouldn't have to address this kind of issue with the intersecting of the shirt mesh with the body here in this video. I wanted to be able to tackle that in a different video, but since we have the problem now, let's go ahead and see what we can do to resolve that. You can see there's some problems back there as well with the shirt intersecting the head. I think part of the reason is because I really did push this mesh beyond, let's say, more average proportions. But here's how we can fix this issue. So I'm going to come over here into my Scenes tab, and I'm going to select the shirt. Actually, while I'm at it, because I put some jeans on him, let's go ahead and get rid of those boxers. We don't need them there if we're not going to see them. We'll select the shirt, and then I'm going to go to this tab here. And what we want to do is edit the mesh. We're going to edit the mesh for the shirt that the character is wearing. So I'll click on that button. And what you'll notice here is that I can actually select, using my select tool, individual vertices on the mesh itself. And if we were to move those vertices, you see what happens. It moves the individual vertex. In that case, we just moved it up. But we don't want to deal with just one vertex. We want to deal with a number of vertices at the same time. So what I'm going to do is activate soft selection. Now we can adjust the radius of it to have a bigger or smaller effect. But then once we get the tool set to the setting that we want, what we can do then is adjust the mesh itself so that we're no longer getting that intersecting problem that we have going on right now. Okay, let's go ahead and fix some more of this. And that's working. Let's go ahead and address the back as well. That looked like that was going to be a problem. To better access that, I think what I will do is perhaps hide the character. I can hide the character here like that, or we can hide the character here in the modify panel as well by click on this tool here. We'll go ahead and make sure that we have the shirt selected and select one of those vertices again. And we'll just move it back some. Now I'm going to undo that. I'm going to make the radius a little bigger so I'm affecting a larger area. Bring it back. Let's see how that's looking. And I'm going to click on Edit Mesh here to finish up with that. And here we go. Now it's looking better. Maybe could use a little more work. Maybe we could pull it back a little, maybe pull it down a little. But we no longer have that intersecting problem there. Let's look at another way that we could maybe work with that a little bit easier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, I have my character selected now, and I'm going to simply change the way that it's rendering here in my scene. I'm going to click on this icon here, which has to do with the way it's rendering. And you can see that we can actually change that to some different rendering, such as the smooth, where we're not looking at the texture, or wireframe. Just as an example, that might make it a little easier to see what we're doing when we select the shirt here. With the shirt selected, I'll go back to Edit Mesh, and we already have Soft Select selected. I'm going to go ahead and select a vertex there. Go ahead and just bring this back a little, maybe bring it down a little as well. That gives us a little bit of room there. Maybe that'll work a little more nicely. So I think we'll go ahead and leave it at that. I'll go ahead and once again click on over here on Edit Mesh to exit that operation. Come back over here to my character and we'll turn its normal rendering back on. So here we have our character. A little bit of a problem there still. You can see it's a lot of back and forth trying to fix these issues, but for the sake of this video, I think that we're going to go ahead and say that this character is finished. We're going to move on to one more thing before wrapping this all up. So we finished making our character, and now we want to work with it in iclone. Let's take a look at how we can bring our character into iclone very easily. So what I'm going to do is go to File, Export, Send Character to iclone. Click on that, and now we'll just go over to iclone and see what we have here. Go ahead and minimize that. You can see it's currently working right now. And there it is. There's our character in our iclone scene. Let's go ahead and drag another character in here just for comparison. So I tried to really adjust the proportions of this figure to make it maybe a little cartoony, make it a little more dwarf-like, like he's a really robust individual that can do lots of hard work in the mines. Let's go ahead and drag this character here into our scene, Christian, just to compare the proportions between the two. And as you can see, they have very different proportions. And now that we have this character in iclone, of course, we can go ahead and do all the other things that we've done with characters in previous weeks, such as putting animations on the character, as well as different poses. Let's find a pose for the character. Now, because of his different proportions, some of these poses might end up being a little bit problematic, but let's go ahead and give one a try. Let's try, we'll just do the simple standing one here. And there he is standing. We can try some other poses. And it looks like it's working pretty well. So I hope that this video will help you create your own unique characters for using in iclone. I'll see you in the next video.